Loving a Pisces is easy until you encounter their silence. This is a sign that can inspire kindness and lose themselves in a person to the last drop, forgetting about themselves. They give warmth without asking for anything in return, and remain silent when a storm rages within. If you've fallen or are falling in love with someone born under this sign, here are 17 things you should know. And finally, a couple of signs that get along best with Pisces. Let's start with the kind of romance that sends shivers. When you don't buy love with grand gestures, but create magic in the mundane. One look from you can say more than 1,000 words, and a light touch can warm you more than a blanket. You know how to turn an ordinary evening into a fairy tale. Turn on music, pour tea, sit next to someone, and silently watch the raindrops roll down the glass. In these simple moments, true magic is born with you, the kind that makes your heart skip a beat and sends shivers down your spine. Pisces are also silent when it's time to speak. It's as if you hide your feelings behind a screen of silence, hoping the person next to you will figure out what's on your mind. You're afraid of being difficult, afraid of ruining the moment, afraid your words will hurt someone. So you swallow your emotions, worrying inside while smiling on the outside. But the truth is, this silence is louder than any words. It hurts you from the inside and distances you from those you love. And then the only question that remains is, why didn't they understand you, even though you never explained how much it hurt you? Now about their ability to forgive. Their soul seems to see deeper than superficial insults. Where others get angry, distant, or shut down, Pisces see not harshness, but pain. Behind a harsh word, they sense fatigue. Behind indifference, fear. Behind a mistake, a desperate attempt to be understood. Instead of seeking revenge or leaving, they choose to stay with warm silence and love. This isn't weakness, but a great inner strength. To forgive when it would be easier to break. Because for them, maintaining a spiritual connection is more important than proving who is right. And precisely for this reason, their love often becomes a true healing for those around them. Furthermore, only Pisces possess such mysticism and enigma. They seem to be created from fog, dreams, and half-hints. It's impossible to fully understand them, and that's precisely what draws them. Pisces' feelings are deep, but not always surface level. Their thoughts are like whispers in a half-sleep, elusive, fragile. They can be silent, yet around them you can sense a whole storm, warm, soundless, but real. People are drawn to Pisces not only for romance, but for the sense of magic they exude. But on the other hand, Pisces tend to idealize love. They live in a world where love isn't just a relationship, but a merging of souls, the magic of touches and glances. You believe that somewhere out there, someone will sense you instantly, understand you without explanation, and look at you as if you were an entire universe. But reality is often harsher than your fantasies. People aren't always willing to dive to such depths. They don't know how to feel so subtly. And then you're left with a broken heart. Not because you weren't loved, but because you were loved differently, not the way you dreamed. And they also don't know how to say no, because they have too much softness, delicacy, and a desire not to hurt anyone. They agree, they give in, they bend, not because they're weak, but because they want to preserve the warmth and not disturb the atmosphere of love. But over time, they begin to feel like they're no longer being heard. Their partner gets used to the fact that Pisces is always for. Even if there's a storm inside, they suffer in silence, swallowing grievances, hoping that someone will read their silence. But alas, without the word no, no one notices how their yes slowly fades. Besides, a Pisces' mood is like the weather. One day they sparkle with love. Their eyes shine, enveloping you in warmth and inspiration. And the next, they're silent, lost in their own thoughts, seemingly distant, not because they've fallen out of love, but because there's a whole ocean of emotions inside. And the waves sometimes caress, sometimes overwhelm. It's difficult for them to cope with this upheaval, and even more difficult to explain it to their partner. They simply feel too much. They live on the edge of emotion, and when it overwhelms them, they need time in silence, not to leave, but to not lose yourself. Now about their ability to inspire kindness. Around them, you want to be softer and more honest. They don't lecture or lecture. They simply live with such warmth that you want to reach for the light. Their kindness isn't ostentatious, but genuine, warm, like hands that can warm your heart. And that's precisely how they change others. Not with words, but with their presence, with their example and their silent light, which suddenly makes you understand what kind of person you've always wanted to be. And they're also keenly aware of moods, so much so that it seems they're reading between breaths. They detect the silence in a voice, the tension in a gesture, the hidden sadness in a smile. They know when words aren't needed, when you just need to be there. They can come up and hug you at the most needed moment, without questions, without reason. They're like an antenna tuned to the frequency of the soul. Someone else's pain isn't someone else's for them, but as if it were their own. And in this, their magic lies in their feelings. They feel more deeply than they speak, and they love more quietly, but more powerfully than one can imagine. But on the other hand, sometimes they don't understand themselves. Instead of clear words, they use glances, hints, and intonations. They seem to speak the language of feelings, not logic. They believe that if the person next to them is truly close, they should sense, guess, and understand. But not everyone can read between the lines. And then resentments arise. After all, there's a storm inside and silence outside. They suffer because they haven't been understood. But they themselves can't always explain in words what's happening in their world. Their feelings are like music without words. Beautiful, profound, but not understandable to everyone. Moreover, they often pretend that everything is fine. They smile, keep up the conversation, pretend that nothing is happening, even when a real storm is raging inside. They don't want to be a burden, don't like to impose their feelings, and so they put on a mask of calm. Their "everything is fine" is often a cry for help, hidden behind a quiet smile. No one realizes how hard it is for them until one day, when their emotions burst forth, abruptly, painfully, unexpectedly, simply because they've kept everything bottled up for too long, hoping someone would see the pain behind their eyes. And most importantly, they can be too mysterious. Everything they're made of, feelings, shadows, hints, silence. Their inner universe is full of nuances, subtleties, and depths that don't always defy explanation. They think everything is already obvious, in gestures, glances, energy. But often, there's someone nearby who needs simple words, direct action, clarity. And then a rift begins. They feel a lot, but don't say anything. And the other person doesn't understand what's happening. And suddenly love turns into a misunderstanding. Pisces also sacrifice themselves. Silently, almost unnoticed, they give their time, energy, and feelings just so their loved one can feel good. They're willing to put aside their desires, swallow resentment, and forget themselves. Because for them, love often means putting someone else first. They do this not for praise, but from the depths of their souls. But they secretly hope. This will be noticed. This will be appreciated. This will be returned. And when it's not returned, it hurts. Not because they gave, but because their invisible sacrifice has become something taken for granted. Let's move on. They have a tendency toward self-destruction. When the pain becomes too acute, they don't scream, don't demand help. They simply disappear within themselves. They close themselves off, freeze, and stifle everything they feel. At this moment, their soul seems to sink underwater, deep, quiet, almost without a trace. On the outside, there's silence and detachment, but inside, there's a storm, tears, and fear. And then it's almost impossible to reach them, not because they don't want to, but because they don't know how. Pisces also have boundless empathy. That's their thing. They seem attuned to the pain of others, like a radio wave. They pick up anxiety, sadness, and tension even before words are spoken, and they can't ignore it. Even when they themselves are wounded and tired, they still find the strength to support, hug, and listen. It's important to them that others feel good, because for them, other people's feelings aren't something external, but rather an extension of themselves. This can be difficult, exhausting, but they don't know any other way. Their heart is big and open, even if it itself needs protection. And finally, about who Pisces get along best with. Pisces are one of the most sensitive, intuitive, and emotionally deep signs of the zodiac. It's important to them not just to be close to someone, but to feel spiritual closeness on a subtle level. They get along best with those who are sensitive to their fragile world. Ideal partners for Pisces often include Cancers and Scorpios, water signs with whom they develop a powerful, almost telepathic connection. They understand Pisces without words, are able to feel just as deeply, and are not afraid of emotional storms. Good understanding is also possible with Capricorns. They provide Pisces with the necessary support, helping their dreams come true. Taurus is another successful union based on stability, care, and gentle romance. With such signs, Pisces can feel safe, allowing themselves to be authentic, without masks, without defenses, just themselves. That's all for now. Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.